jazz is like always changing. So it's changed so much from like its kind of beginnings and roots like 200 years ago to like now. How do you personally balance honoring tradition while still like pushing the music forward and expressing your own authenticity as an artist?
Yeah, it's a good question. Uh, I will admit it is hard to find that balance
It is.
between the tradition and what maybe you want to do artistically. I think in varying times of my life, the focus has sort of like maybe wavered
Mhm.
between those two things. I would say when I was okay, let's see. When I first started playing jazz, maybe that was freshman year for me. So I would say maybe my first 2 years of high school, I was trying to get more into the tradition, trying to
Mhm.
learn like all the stuff that I needed to learn. And
Yeah.
then maybe junior, senior year of high school, I started to, sort of understand those things. And I was sort of the lone fish in my school of like, there were very few of us that were into jazz.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, so I don't know, I guess maybe by junior, senior year, I felt like, I was becoming a bigger fish in a smaller pond, right?
Mhm.
And so I thought like, oh, cool, I'm gonna like just focus on the stuff the more modern stuff that I want to get into.
And they
Um,
like push yourself and like just get out there and do it.
sure. But then in college, that sort of happened again. Like I went, I grew up in Burlingame, but then went to school in New York at the new school. And when I got to school, I realized like, wow, I'm a piece of bacteria in an ocean of talent. And really felt like the first 2 years I had to go back and really work on the tradition, work on some
Mhm.
fundamental things,
Yeah.
and sort of like get my act together. Um, and then 2 years of doing that and really practicing hard. Those first 2 years, I was in the practice room like 6 to 8 hours a day, in on top of all of the classes. Like I was living at the music building at school, and um, but then junior senior year, you start to like be more confident in your thing and what you've like worked on, and I got exposed to a lot of different things, and my friends were influencing me a lot of ways and what I was checking out. Also my classes and my professors were sort of like pushing me to
Yeah.
expand what I was listening to and what we were all playing and what we were absorbing. Um, and so how do you balance it? Well, you now my modern day, um or my modern day life as a musician, like post college, post freelancing for 10 plus years, um uh I do actively try to split my mind between or my practice session maybe into like, okay, I'm going to do an hour on, or just today, maybe on Monday, I'm gonna do only alto saxophone, and I'm just gonna play like Sunny Stitt. I'm gonna play like some old school, old school jazz on my saxophone. And then on the next day, I might just be like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna do 100% on bass clarinet, and I'm just gonna try to write some new music and do something that's purely for my own creative
Mhm.
process. I think you do have to sort of build it into your routine, and uh, to-do lists have really helped me along the way. Sort of like, okay, cool, like just maybe tracking your practice routine, and I'm not like super strict about that. It doesn't need to be an everyday thing, but
Yeah.
uh, every season or so, like I do have this notebook where I kind of check in with myself about what am I practicing on sort of both sides of that
Mhm.
coin. Um, so that's how I balance it, is just like try to actively make that balancing of the coin or the balancing of that pendulum a bit.
Yeah.
Try to build that into your routine, and to-do lists can help with that sometimes.
Yeah, it's because I feel like just being like able to really help and like really express the tradition is just critical to being an artist. Like being
Sure.
able to like really appreciate like the people who've come before you. Um,
Yeah.
and then like you were talking a lot about like listening and like how broadening your listening like the things you're listening to is really like shaped like your creative expression. So
Definitely.
what are some ways that you hear older jazz styles, like maybe like ragtime, showing up in modern jazz?
Ooh, well, I don't know if I like can come up with, you know, like pure examples of what you just described,
Mhm.
ragtime in modern jazz, but um, all of the modern jazz that's happening in New York or in LA or parts of the Bay Area or be parts of like pretty much every sort of major city across the world. I would say I was going to say America, but it's like, well, now there's like great jazz scenes in like
Yeah,
London and all these crazy places. Where am I trying to get back to? All the modern jazz that's coming out is sort of, and I mean, all modern music is influenced by what has come before it. Um, and so I don't know if like in like the super modern, I'm just thinking about like the stuff happening in New York. Like New York tends to um, be for whatever reason since like the 50s, New York has tended to be sort of the mecca of jazz.
yeah,
So like what's happening there tends to ripple out everywhere else in the jazz world. Um, what's happening in New York, I mean, it's like I would say the music that's happening in 2025 is very influenced by the music that was happening like 20 years ago there,
hmm,
but just in a hyper, what am I trying to describe? Like the musicians of today are influenced by mostly the musicians of like the previous generation,
yeah,
right?
uh-huh.
So if you think about some of the those musicians, um, I mean, for my generation, we really looked up to Joshua Redman, Christian McBride, Brad Meldau, Kurt Rosenwinkel.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you know these names, but
One or two, yeah.
yeah, those musicians are all still alive. They're in their maybe 50s and 60s
Yeah.
now. I'm in my late 30s. So it's like those cats were releasing records like when I was in high school, they were releasing records and that's what we were sort of consuming in sort of the modern jazz world. So where do I mean, I hear some of the artists that I just mentioned, like I hear their styles sort of trickle down in
Yeah.
some of the music that I'm hearing from the musicians playing in 2025 in New York. You know, um, it's all kind of funneled down in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, but that's like what the music has been doing since its inception is
Exactly. Like you definitely see like the patterns like throughout history, like everyone's influenced like the generation ahead of them, and it's because like the music you grow up hearing it really influences your style and like your like who you are as a musician like later on in your life. It's really
definitely. There is I mean there is an anomaly to what we're talking about. Like there are musicians in New York who are playing in like an old style. Like
yeah,
and so we call that like trad jazz or like it's become its own thing. So like there are musicians that are alive today that sound like a musician like Louis Armstrong or Sidney Bechet, a musician that lived like 100 years ago.
yeah,
And that's sort of like a different thing, though. And maybe not exactly what you're talking about, but I would say the history of the music is so vast that you can now sort of like, as a modern day musician in 2026, about to be, you could almost like go back to an era and decide, like, you know what, I'm going to become a specialist in 1930s clarinet playing, you know, or I'm going to become a specialist in this one era of jazz. And that's cool. Like, or as a musician, like you probably have like different phases of that. Like I have definitely had that where like there's 5 or so years I was super into Lee Konitz from like 1955 to 1960, and then like now I'm in this like Jackie McLean phase.
hmm,
Um, there's like moments where we spend you might feel like, oh, there's one vocalist or just one musician where like I've been obsessed with for the past like year or two or
oh,
three, and that'll change over time, you know. um so Anyway, I sort of digress there, but
No, that's super cool. And like not it's just it's so cool. Like you have those different like phases. Like, hey, I want to work on maybe like a different type of sound. And like
sure.
I feel like being able to like really explore all different like facets of like jazz, like even like for me, like maybe like sounding a little bit more like, Ella or Billie Holiday, or like kind of looking at those different places in time, because jazz really evolves like super quickly. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
definitely.
And then you were really talking about New York and how it's become like a hot spot over like the last, maybe I'm gonna say like 75 years ish. But also like before that, even like the Bay Area, especially like San Francisco, it has like a really unique jazz history. Like, what do you think makes like this ecosystem distinct from like other jazz hubs in your opinion?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Well, I guess I'm sort of curious, like if you're the history of the scene in San Francisco is maybe a separate conversation from what the scene is like currently. And
Yeah.
and so I sort of wanted to clarify, like what are you more curious about? Like how it is now or how it's been over or how it was maybe like back in back in like the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, maybe like back in the 50s and 60s, because I feel like that's kind of where it was. Like, I know a lot of incredible musicians like resided there and like were really a big part of that community.
Yeah, so there I mean, basically, like San Francisco does have a rich history with jazz. A lot of it is connected with the Great Migration,
Yeah,
and so I mean that that involves the migration of enslaved people from the south
yeah,
moving up north but also moving west. And I mean you could also talk about how the history of jazz in San Francisco is connected to the Great Migration in relation to the gold rush.
yeah,
In relation to the gold rush is like a really insane thing that we talked about. It was sort of covered like for a little bit, a sliver when I was growing up, but it actually is like uh, a really insane economic and cultural boon that happened that really like shaped the entire Bay Area to its core. Um, and so, I mean, fast forward into the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. My understanding of it is that most of the jazz scene was hunkered down in the Fillmore district.
yes, yeah,
Um, and there's actually a book that I have. It's called Harlem of the West, and um, it's it's a book that basically kind of covers the history of jazz, specifically in the Bay Area, but also of all of the musicians that toured through the area and played in San Francisco, like Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Thelonious Monk and all these crazy people came through San Francisco quite frequently. And many of them recorded in some of these clubs that don't exist anymore. Um, uh, that the Fillmore district, I mean, the Fillmore Street spans um, kind of it's north to south, and there's what's called the Lower Fillmore and the Upper Fillmore,
yeah,
and uh, back in the day, I think the whole neighborhood was a bit more connected, um, and for I mean, we're getting into some real deep topics here, but like, through like gentrification and probably redlining in a way, and just racism in general, like African Americans got pushed out of San Francisco in general, got pushed over to Oakland. Now they're even getting pushed out of Oakland into other crazier parts of the
yeah,
Bay. But there's the Upper Fillmore, the Lower Fillmore. I would say to be honest, a lot of that doesn't really exist anymore.
no,
Um, and so the that history of jazz in San Francisco is almost like I wouldn't say unconnected, but what's happening now is sort of not even related to Fillmore Street anymore. Um, uh, In fact, like, I mean, unfortunately, there's not even a single jazz club on Fillmore Street to this day.
Oh,
Um, there is something still called the Fillmore Jazz Festival, which is a festival that happens every year around, um, it's in July sometime, like around the 4th of July weekend or something. Um, but that's like it's like a 2 or 3 day festival. That's sort of the only jazz that happens on that street.
oh wow.
Um, and so, yeah, what's happening in sort of my scene and my community, I mean, we don't really hang out on Fillmore Street. Again, that's sort of disconnected from what's happening in 2025. But
Yeah.
we're also talking about of like 50 or 60 years of history that really fundamentally changed that neighborhood and changed the city, you know?
Yeah,
Um, it's pretty deep history.
it really is. It's crazy kind of how it became literally one of the most incredible and like most diverse jazz spaces like in America to like not being that anymore. It's really actually quite sad. It was
Yeah, in a way.
I mean change is it's necessary but like
It sort
um
of is what it is
yeah.
for us, younger people just existing. So like we don't have control over what has happened in the past. We're just sort of
Yeah.
navigating it.
And then in 2025, I think jazz has like really become like super open to any type of person, no matter their background, just being able. Jazz has kind of always been that, just being able to kind of gather somewhere, maybe at like a jazz open mic night or something like that, and just express. Like, what do you think helps create that like super unique jazz space where a diverse array of people like feels like supportive enough to like really take risks and be themselves?
What does it take? It's a good question. I think it takes, or so like part of your question is like sort of the answer a little bit. Like you need people that are sort of willing to be themselves.
Like,
Right. You need people who are down to be supportive, and where that is sort of their default way of sort of existing in the world. Um, and so if you can foster a community where those things are happening, then I think the vibes will be good. It makes me think about there's this jam session in San Francisco that I helped to organize. Um, it's this place called the Blue Room, and um, basically I have been organizing it for the past year and a half because I live a few blocks away from this place, and um, when they approached me about doing a jam session, the way I launched it is by instead of me leading the jam session every single week, I decided that, maybe I'll run it once a month, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get friends from different parts of the
uh-huh.
community to run it each week. Um, and because I didn't want the responsibility of doing it all the time, and I also didn't want it to become gate kept solely by me.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
I sort of am gatekeeping it because I'm still organizing it, but um, what I mean is like I think some of the communities there are okay, jazz. You have experienced Stanford Jazz Workshop where like
yeah.
when you go to those jam sessions, you see like wow, like everybody's really supportive and everybody's really cool and everybody's like really nice. When I went to the camp, the shit was not like that. And the jazz community has not always been that way. And I will say that what happens at Stanford Jazz Workshop is a little bit unique. I personally am trying to make what's happening at the Coho, for example. I want to make that the new normal for the scene,
Yeah.
for the wider community. But I will say if you go out to some random jam session in some random state in this country or whatever, I bet you the vibes are not going to be
No.
as good as what you have experienced at SJW, for example.
It's gonna be really like really really different. Like I've recently I've done a lot of several jam sessions at SF Jazz. I'm a vocalist for SF Jazz. And like the vibe is actually quite similar to Stanford Jazz. Like the people, like as you were talking about with the Blue Room, like people like different. They invite different artists, whether that's like vocalists, pianists. I know Tammy Hall and Tiffany Austin were there a
Yeah, yeah,
couple of days ago. It was super fun. And everyone's just super supportive and just willing to get out there, no matter, I guess, like it's a really big population of people that come in there every single time. And at first it was a bit nerve wracking, but like everyone was super like supportive and super fun. And it was the same at Stanford Jazz. Like everyone's so welcoming and so supportive.
yeah. I mean, that's good. That's good to hear. I guess what I'll just say is that not every community or every scene or every jam session is like that. There's for as many good ones and supportive ones there are probably just as many bad or sort of
Yeah.
unsupportive or sort of vibey ones. And my thought, I mean, SF Jazz has a good model where like they have kind of like a rotation of people who run those jam sessions, similar to the Blue Room. What I'm doing over there, it's like you get different people to run it. I think when there's sort of this term gatekeeping, which means like you're if I were to decide, I'm going to run every single jam session at the Blue Room, I would be gatekeeping that jam
Yeah.
session, and it would become just about me, and it would just be about me and my friends basically,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't blossom into this bigger thing.
No, it would
And
be like a
so,
specific vibe, like what, like one kind of specific like vibe, and I feel like it's like with the Bloom, what you've done is kind of open it up to like a ton of different um, vibes, and like it becomes a
yeah,
super well-rounded and super supportive
exactly.
like club for everyone from different backgrounds and different vibes to come and like jam.
Yeah. So again, going back to your question, it's like you need people who are willing to be themselves. You need people where their default vibe is to be supportive and to be cool. And then I think you need sort of like no gatekeepers. And
Yes.
um, uh, or just no like one big personality or one big ego
Uh-huh.
sort of like driving it all in some weird or negative way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm thinking like maybe the last question. Uh, how and when did your playing start to feel like personal and genuine instead of like copying the sound of like other great artists like Charlie Parker or like John Coltrane? Because I know that's something that a lot of budding jazz musicians, like even me, like especially me, actually struggle with.
Well, my story is a little bit sort of backwards. I feel like I don't feel that I okay, what you're talking about, like tech being technically sound and sort of like imitating others.
Yes.
Those are things that when I was growing up, I didn't really have any teachers that were specifically telling me to do that and guiding me along that process. So I never felt very technical, and I never ever really transcribed until I got to college. Um, and so that was always, you know, what, so as a young saxophone player, um, you know, my dad had a friend actually, a musician friend, and he came to hear me play one time, and he was like, and his feedback to my dad was like, you know what, your son is a good young player. He doesn't really have like the fingers together yet, but he's got a really great sound, and that will hold him over or something. And I sort of understood that when I heard that feedback through my dad's friend that like, yeah, like I have never really been that great of a technical player, have never really, my ear has been sort of my weakest link actually. I grew up playing mostly classical music, reading music from the page. So learning how, like, again, nobody taught me how to learn by ear or to transcribe a solo until I got to school, freshman year of college, like way later than a lot of even like you and your friends are sort of getting the heads up, like, oh, like this is how you do it, you know?
Yeah.
So I personally feel like I am playing some catch up to all of that. So I feel like I sort of early on had a good sound and a bit of an original sort of voice because I was just trying to figure it out on my own. But then I sort of started to realize, like, when I got into school and just deeper into my career, and playing around town more, that like, oh, like I still have like a lot of homework to do, and I'm still playing catch up. Like, if you if for me, what I practice most in my own personal practice is transcribing and like playing things through the keys. Like, once I've figured out something on my horn, I got to play it through all the keys so I understand it in as fluidly as possible. I also tried as much as I can, even though I can't stomach it a lot, to like practice very technical things like scale patterns, or like, different things that will just increase my technical facility on the horn. I don't really like practicing those things, but I know that they're my weakness, so I actively try to address it.
Hmm.
Um, so my story is a little bit flipped from like how you're phrasing your question, and maybe a little bit flipped from how you've been taught at a younger age,
Yeah.
um, that like, hey, and this is good. Like, this is what I want you as a student coming through Stanford Jazz Workshop to understand, that like, yeah, if you want to really do this music well, you've got to like get your technique together,
Yes.
and you've got to imitate and understand like who are the people who have done it before you
Yes.
that have sounded the best. And if you can start to imitate them, then cool. Like, you start there, and then you figure out your own thing.
And you really
Um,
like develop your sound, and you really like just create your own music like based on those people that came before you, and those like especially those techniques like that you were talking about. Like, I kind of vibe with what you're like talking about right now. Like, I don't love like singing my Mixolydian scales, my bebop scales, but like they're necessary. And like if you especially if you want to like create that music, I know you're a composer as well. It's really important to like have those technical skills.
yeah, definitely. Uh, oh, there's something I was gonna say, but it's slipping my mind. Um, I forget what it is. But yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I uh, don't quite know. I think like the artistic part. This is what I was gonna say. The art, the artistic part that you're talking about, come or where you're sort of curious, like, okay, how do you go from all this fundamental stuff in this transcription and turn it into an artistic thing? I think it just takes time, maturity, and life experience, and um, just time. So like, you're in like this ripe time of your life where like your brain can absorb just like so much information at once, and can really grow in like massively big ways. Um, like, you've probably heard this before. Like, you don't need to worry about being an artist yet.
No.
It's like, this is your time to absorb it all, and then like when you turn, I don't know, 18, and then 21, and then 25, there's like these like landmarks in life, right? Where like you're gonna find yourself in these different landmarks, and you're gonna just be in all those benchmarks, like 18, 21, 25, 30. You're just gonna like be in a completely different space
Yeah.
at each one of those. And that's sort of like how you navigate those times in your life, is sort of like where the artistic stuff starts to sort of bubble up.
It's
At least that's my
absolutely.
thinking.
That's absolutely like I think like at different stages in your life, like I've already learned like in the past 2 years, like when I've really focused on being a jazz vocalist, I've learned so much, and I've really evolved like as a vocalist, like insane amount. And it, like looking back at that, like it almost like I can't imagine I'm the same person as who I was like when I like 2 years
Sure.
ago.
Totally. Totally.
It's insane.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to
Yeah,
come
no
and talk
problem.
to me. This has been super cool.
So what's this for again?
It's a project that I'm doing for school, and it's I just wanted to talk about like jazz history and really tie it into what I'm interested in.
Cool. Is it like is it a long project over like a span of time, or
Uh,
is it like
yeah.
you have like an urgent due date with it?
No, it's like a long kind of project over a span of time, but I think it's due in January, so.
Okay, cool, nice. Well, good luck. I mean, if there's like whatever your final product is, whether it's a paper or something, I'd be curious to check it out. So let me know.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll definitely send that to you or do something. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. We should
Yeah.
keep in
See you
touch.
soon.
Yeah. I think if I see you before summer, yeah, but summer is not that far away, so.
I know it really isn't. So yeah. Well, happy holidays. Stay well, and if I don't see you between now and summer, have a great one. Catch you
You
later.
too. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Bye.
Catch you later. Bye.